In the very beginning of the year, I made them wear masks to school, and they would say, Mom, we're the only ones wearing a mask, but they didn't have a booster yet available for their age group. Now they do. But we got COVID. We got flu B. I mean, it was just and thankfully we are vaccinated, so it wasn't as terrible as it could have been, but still it was quite terrible. And so I forget what I was talking about, but in any event, I understand having a sick dog, because I would very often have my sick children for like the past couple of months. In many of my videos, even they like pop up and they're like, can I? They're silly anyway, so it's no big deal. So what was like I said, you did well. Anytime you can include visuals, drawings, your annotation and your analysis of the science TEKS for 4th and 5th grade, like really doing a deep dive and getting to know what each one is about, and then making those connections. Like you're making those connections to your personal experience, like what you experienced as a child going through Texas public schools. I did the same thing. I had it's a kinder, 1st, 2nd grade, like they grow things. And I don't remember what grade it was specifically, but we grew lima beans, and that's something that they still do, to see the way that plant life works and the way that it begins from a seed. And it's not all super technical, like the goings on inside of the seed, but it's the beginning, the building blocks, and it's given to them in a way in which, to be honest with you, everybody just learns better. Everyone learns better by doing and seeing in real life. That's like the best way that anyone can learn, to have a mentor and to be in it and to do and see, and have that visual and someone there to guide you with explanations. So that whole lima bean process, I remember it myself. And I remember it even taught us other things, social, emotional wise, because over the weekend, some people's plants died, and mine made it through the weekend, and I'm not sure why theirs didn't make it, but for whatever reason, maybe they overwatered it and gave it like root rot. I'm not sure, but I remember a couple of kids, crying, even a little boy, especially, that his hadn't made it through the weekend. And I felt really bad, like, man, mine made it, and now he doesn't even have anything to look at or draw, or, you know what I mean? I felt really bad for the kids. So I feel like that day, obviously I'm 40 years old and I still remember it. It was like when I was in 1st grade. But having those experiences, talking about things, learning, obviously my teacher said, we will plan a new one. We will start it new, and it'll be smaller than everyone else's and behind a little bit, but that's okay. And then so she was able to explain to us, obviously, that they'll be at different stages depending on when they're planted. And so it's very sad this plant died, but we can fix it and plant a new plant. So no big deal. Very important to, as you go through this, try to, as much as possible, make those connections, those personal prior knowledge connections to things in your own life. Helps it solidify the knowledge in your own mind. What were your big takeaways? That was the question I was going to ask you before I got off topic, and then decided to press record. But what were your biggest takeaways between 4th and 5th grade science?
It was the building, I guess, how to conduct research, where the idea of developing a hypothesis, figuring out how you're going to carry it out. There's like 5 pages per grade level, and right. Each one has just shown, I guess, as like the grade level progresses, as a higher their education goes higher, it goes more in depth. So it starts with just your basic hypothesis, what you think is going to happen, what would probably happen, what happens, and did your hypothesis come out true or false?
True. Yeah. Did it work out or not?
And then like as the grade levels go higher, it's more specific, it's more scientific, it's building on scientific knowledge. And
Right.
it's just, I guess, the level of, it's not exactly a difficulty, it's just, I guess, stronger words it's being used, but it all means the same thing, is what
Oh,
I was seeing.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we're definitely introducing those ideas, beginning to define things, right? So they'll learn the definition and should have a really strong, like, my girls are lucky because both my husband and I don't work in the field of science, but I have considered myself a scientist for a very, 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 very long time. And I've been a teacher my whole life. So and he does AC and heating. He owns his own business, and he also considers himself a scientist, and he really is, possibly more than me. But anyway, it's not a contest. But there's science everywhere, and so I try to show my girls, all of my children, but especially the two youngest ones that are in first and second grade. You know what I mean? And use that academic vocabulary and say, hey, like if they're very educated guests that they said to everybody came true, I'll say like, oh man, so your hypothesis was correct and it worked out. And so trying to make those connections whenever possible. And I do it in my home, but certainly we would want to begin to do that in the classroom, especially after we introduce the idea, to show them that like you don't have to be inventing something new or measuring something with scientific tools to come up with a hypothesis. I can say right now it is 40 something degrees, no, 50 something degrees in San Antonio. I bet you a lot of people are wearing jackets, or coats outside. Like that there are more people wearing jackets than not. That's my hypothesis. And that's an educated guess. It has nothing really to do with like science and whatnot, but there's science in everything. And that idea of logical thought and making inferences, and where theories and theoretical thought begins, that's how it begins, with just people asking questions and saying things and making observations and taking guesses based on what they know and what they see and what they measure. So you see this incremental, this increase, right? It's like incremental, like they're building. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to look at kindergarten, but I always think it's really interesting. And I did for myself. When I became a teacher and I was studying my TEKS, because what you were doing, I did myself. I sound like my niece right now. I did myself. There's a video. Anyway, so I did this myself, and I went and looked at kindergarten and first grade because I wanted to see like, what are they learning? What should they come to me with? What skills? And then to see sort of like the flow of where things are supposed to go, the direction, because if not, it's just kind of like, if you just wait to look at your TEKS until you get a job placement and you're like, oh, I'm going to be 7th grade ELAR. Cool. I get placed in there. And I've done no studying as to what they did in 6th grade, what areas of weakness are normal trends, none of that stuff. My job's going to be really hard, and I'm probably not going to be super good at it. Just a hypothesis. I'm just saying, based on my 20 plus years in education, teaching students and now teaching teachers, which is a science in itself. Getting you guys, helping you achieve your goals, your learning goals with regards to the exams, with regards to building your experience for the classroom. So science all around. This is really good. And what was something else you noticed? The building, was there any totally new, like we didn't talk about this in 4th grade, but now it appears in 5th grade. Were there anything like that?
I noticed, so they didn't exactly say it, on the
No, they
fifth
don't
grade.
ever say it. They're not going to say it. We just have to know it, which is why I want for you to take special note of those things. You know, what is it that's different between those? And because that's a really good place for them to ask you a tricky question. That you would just know, oh, this is something fifth graders do and not fourth graders or not whomever. So paying attention to those nuanced differences, because by and large, it's as you said, it is the same thing. We're just saying it in a more complex, getting deeper. You know what I mean? We're doing a more rigorous analysis of the same concept and talking about it maybe in a more sophisticated way, academic way, but same concept. But we do have, you know, one-offs and introductions and new things that we begin doing with the students.
So I did notice fourth grade, they do touch on the base of organisms and their environment, just like traits and things and how organisms, I guess, get along with each other or what they do to, just what they do to live, basically. But that's all it says. In fifth grade, it shows, it doesn't say specifically, but the idea of Darwinism is implied.
Okay.
And I'm not sure when that starts getting taught. I honestly don't remember when it was that I learned that, but like survival it is. And
so it's like that, yeah, it's the beginnings of it, and it's the ideas implied. And I bet you as we get to 6th and 7th grade, those ideas are going to be because it's 4 through 8, correct?
Yes, 4 through 8.
Right. So 6th and 7th grade is going to get to where we say Darwinism. You know, we talk specifically about those scientists, those ideas. You know, some people might even go there and just introduce that as they're doing it. So that's an interesting one. And so were there any areas of confusion as far as math? And did you look at the actually look at it for you. Science. Star. So
I was a little confused on like scientific engineering practices. I didn't know as a kid we did that stuff, because I feel like this isn't stuff that isn't like, I guess you're not.
No, we did it. And I'll tell you something that I noticed just from because like, as I said, I'm a scientist, a scholar, and I research all the time. I really am. I'm not just saying it. Like, I've done research. I wrote a master's thesis on how students write on how they wrote on MySpace, you know, like how they applied their writing from inside my classroom onto their personal MySpace pages, which really makes me feel super old because MySpace is not even a thing anymore. So,
I was like trying to think like MySpace.
oh my God, it's been not a thing for a super long time. But anyway, my point is that yeah, my point is that I'm a researcher and I pay attention to stuff. So since I tutor all content areas, all grade levels, I have, you know, a pretty healthy knowledge of all of the standards and the last times they have been updated and the TEXES and when they have been updated. And science really gets updated pretty frequently. And if we'll look at the TEXES, if we look at the science TEXES, they want them, I think, look, they were adopted. So that if they were adopted in 2017, that means they worked on them for like maybe 2015 and then again in 2001. But there are some that are still from 2003. There's some that are 2012 that their TEXES haven't been changed. With like ELAR hasn't been changed in a long time, but not a lot changes in English. There was a major change though, for everyone when they added like the need for them to make be like technologically proficient, you know, to like add that everywhere, because that wasn't a thing that was a thing when I started teaching. Like, and there was a lot of old teachers, and I don't want to say old, I just want to like veteran teachers, you know, in 2003, 2004, that did not want an email. And this persisted all the way, I would say, man, even to like 2010, maybe. People were still being like, I don't even check my email. And then like the principals would be like, it is no longer a choice. You must look at your emails. You must talk to the parents via email. You know, you have to use these modes of like technology no longer became a choice for these people to participate in. And a lot of times the parents for a long time also did not have that technology as well, but everybody's caught up, like industry's caught up. Everybody needs their emails, not just your phone number. Like you need to, even when you go and get a card, like at Sally's or something, so I can get a discount. It's like they want my email too. They want my phone number. They want my mom's maiden name. Like, you know, they want a lot of information, but the email, everybody had to get with the program, and they had to get with the program with a lot of other stuff. ELAR, getting off topic, had to change their stuff because of social media and making students be able to like analyze their audience better, you know what I mean, and see like persuasion in videos, in you know, just media literacy all around. I don't know that we're doing that great of a job at this point, but it is in there. So here you have science, and it's been adopted. And the reason I believe science, my next hypothesis, gets updated so frequently is that it does get changed. Like science is something that like there's a lot of scientists working at, and that's not to say that other areas don't get changed as well. They do. But it's sometimes slower. You know, scholars in English language arts and reading have a whole new area of things to talk about with visual print ads and bias and misinformation and all of that stuff to look at. And there'll probably be changes in a while, but it's going to take a while. Science moves quicker, and Texas wants it to move quicker. We want our students to be more on the engineering side, which is why you see those engineering questions, because that is the goal, to make students understand the way in which math, science, you know, your ability to like critically think and write up proposals and carry out ideas plays all in together. It's like all of the areas together, and a great place for you guys to play around with all of the different areas. Really, science is a great place. You guys have lab reports, so you can, and even if you do something in a super simple lab report with like fourth graders or even first graders, you know, you could even introduce what a lab report is if that's in your TEKS. And if you just want to introduce it and practice writing skills, you know, it's just that it lends itself to so many, and it demands so many of the content area to be proficient in order, so that's why they want them to do it. So you can see right here, right at the beginning, and I went to kindergarten, scientific and engineering practices is like one of the first things that's stated in the TEKS. It's the goal, right? It's the end all for us. We want our students to be able to think critically, use science to engineer, use math to engineer, to think, to question, to produce. So with your investigation, let's move, but we'll take a look at what they said. I just want you to see like how basic it is. Engineering practices, they just have to identify problems and design solutions using appropriate tools and models. Recommended integrate scientific and engineering practices throughout the classroom and outdoor investigations for at least 80% of the instructional time. So 80% of their time is supposed to be outside for science class. I'm going to ask my daughter. I don't think they do that.
I don't think My little brother, I don't think he's done that either.
I mean, maybe. I mean, recess could be part of that. Like that might be where they get their recess time or an extra recess from, which is fine. But it's supposed to be a little bit more focused. Investigatory research, recess. Let me see. Force and motion, students study or explore the location, motion, position of objects, investigate the importance of light energy as it relates to students' everyday lives. Students focus on demonstrating light energy sources and their effect on objects. So like you could do little artwork and whatnot. So building that super basic knowledge, not at all what you're already doing and talking about at the 4th grade, right? We're already at a much, much more complex level than just like talking about how light helps the earth in different ways. You're much past that. So you said some of the engineering, and I wanted to bring your attention to 5th grade as a resource for your study and practice the STAR exams. So this is the 5th grade STAR science exam. And like I said, the TEKS are what the state, or they're the students' objectives. They're what we plan our objectives, right, for our lessons, because the students have to master those particular knowledge and skill. So this is their assessment of our job, getting them to learn those knowledge and skills, everything that's there in 5th grade and sort of prior. It's meant to be 5th grade and prior because there is no science before this, but it is presumed that the student has the prior knowledge from the previous years. They might even assess some of those particular skills, but they're always going to be more complex and elevated the more like larger the grade level. So I start with the 7th grade, and then you're also going to have an 8th grade one to practice with. Have you been looking through these? Because we were talking about this last time, right? Your brother was doing this, and that's how he knows how to do it, which is crazy pants.
Doesn't make any sense to me anymore, but
yeah, I know. So what I would do is make sure that like even printing out some of these and highlighting the answer, and then there's a rationale sheet and writing the rationale out on there. Did you do that already?
Yes, I actually have a big fat binder.
Oh my Lord, holy shnikes. Yeah. So and so you're gonna want to review those things by talking about them. Talk about them with your little brother, make him into a little science genius. He's gonna learn all the 5th grade TEKS, like help him, involve him in the process. But find ways for it to become sort of fluent knowledge. Now, what else are you using? You've used the 5th grade. Have you looked at the 8th grade?
The 8th grade, not yet.
Okay.
I was noticing like on some of the notes, it like we said earlier, it is getting more in depth, and it's giving you like famous figures of science,
Right.
And it's just like, I guess there's of course there's like a lot of history into it, but it's from the knowledge that you already somewhat know, or what the student would somewhat know, they're going into like the history of why they have to know that, who came up with this, how it was developed, and how it's continuing. So that's what I've been noticing with all these notes.
Absolutely. So it's about making the connection. Like, where did this person come from? Who are they? Like, many of the amazing scientists were born nobodies, and like studied their way into greatness, or had magical brains and then still studied their way into greatness. And then their application of that knowledge and how it affects us all and how people still continue to build on that because science always evolves, which is why it makes so much sense. My hypothesis is correct. That the science teaks are the ones that change the most often because we're always testing it and finding new and better ways, right, of understanding, of explaining, of doing things. So you're right. That's why we're going into that detail to try to make those connections to it, with the hopes that they, want to contribute to the cause. We do need more scientists out there, more scientist-minded people, more people who understand. Later, they'll get to learn about that the planet is dying. And so I remember, because they don't talk about it at this, and even, and like my younger kids know already, but it's because of their older siblings, and we talk about it all the time as a family, and it's like part of our thing, So it's a scary thing. And but when you start talking about it like in class, and when kids have like not known it and they're just barely like learning that, some of the things that we do and the ways in which we live affect us long term and might be affecting us irreparably. Some of them get pretty stressed out about that. I mean, pretty stressed out for little kids, So you went through the fifth grade ones. That's good. I would definitely continue to practice with those. And then you'll notice sixth grade doesn't have them. A science test. Seventh grade doesn't have a science test, but they used to. They did cut back on some of the tests because they used to test more. They have cut back on some of them, and I was really, really, really hoping that Bethel would win and we would cut back on all of them, because I don't think that they do a good job of measuring our students' brilliance. Like, they literally just don't. And we know students have multiple intelligences, and not all of them do amazing on exams, but that doesn't mean they're not amazing at their craft or at their like other particular things. So these are very myopic is sort of exams, like very small looking.
I remember waiting until I got to a certain grade level so I didn't have to take a certain star exam anymore. I remember doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody wants to do that. It's added anxiety. And, again, I'm going to date myself. And I tested TOS as an assessment, the TOS test. So I took the TOS, and I also taught and administered TOS assessment. And then we went to TAX for a long time. And then they didn't call it STAR right away. They called it like for a little bit, they were calling it something else. And then they were going to call it the EOCs, the end of courses, but then they went with STAR. And there were going to be more of them. There were talks that they were going to be end of course for every single content area. So if you did theater arts, there was going to be some sort of a theater arts exam for them. I mean, it was just preposterous, but that was a long time ago.
That stress when I was like in the fourth grade or third grade, when it was like
too much and so stupid. It's my daughters haven't taken it yet, and I know my second grader, who is a perfectionist, is going to make herself sick on that day. She gives herself like stomach aches, and she's going to take it very seriously. She's not yet at that level where they have to do that, but it is stressful, especially when the kids care a lot and they have anxiety, and that does something to the brain. It really does. And it's unnecessary. So for this one, you see already with this added reference material that the exam is going to be much more difficult, right? Were these offered for the fifth grade exam?
I'm not sure, actually.
I don't think they were. They might have been. I might be wrong.
No, it wasn't. Not for the fifth grade.
Right. So like we said, essentially same knowledge and skill per se, but we're getting more in depth, more advanced, more rigorous in that particular skill. One moment, please. I have to check something. We are leaving today on a trip. Oh, we are leaving today on a big trip.
Ooh.
To New Mexico, all my children except my oldest, because he has to work. He works for HB adulting. And so he can't just leave on a family vacation, but everyone else who is sort of jobless, like children wise, all my nieces are going, except for the baby and my sister and her husband for the baby. So the oldest and youngest grandkid are not going, but like my littlest sister, her husband, all of the other kids are going, the older kids. It's like a lot of people, and my parents, and we're all going in one van. I don't even know. They're going to come and pick us up today. So I have to go pick up my daughters early from school. They are super excited. I have, we're going to stay at this big cabin all together, and they're like they're out of their mind. Like they haven't been able to sleep for days. So, but I just feel like I don't have enough time to prepare. And I've been working this whole time and trying to like check things off my list, like make sure everybody has like thermals and like the appropriate clothing and toothbrushes and medicine. So it's been stressful for me, the packing process for children. So anyway, what I'd like for you to do is to commence with your study process for grades 6 and 7. And you know what, even before you do 8th grade, because I want you to wait and do 8th grade later, and we'll meet again and kind of talk about it, but take some of these 8th grade ones without doing your deep dive just yet, just with your 5th grade knowledge, right? Because I want you to see how important like the 5th and the 6th and 7th grade years are, as far as being instrumental to teach background knowledge. And then obviously after we do the 8th grade deep dive, you'll be able to easily see the mistakes for many of these and continue on with your studying that way. You are going to come across, some mathematical things that you might be rusty with, finding out the density. But they're not just going to say, oh, look, here's they gave you the formula for density. This is density, this is mass, find volume. They're going to give you some sort of word problem, because that's what they're going to give the kids. And you have to be able to identify within, what's the problem? What are they looking for in this problem? Oh, they're looking for volume. So like they're looking for the total distance. So this is how I find it. To utilize the math and the formulas appropriately. You'll have to teach them how to do those things. So think about those things. Sorry, there was a flag. As you are, sort of taking these. So before you do your deep dive, take at least 1 or 2 of these practice star to see where you are. And then to try to see, what things or skills, knowledge facts and skills are you preparing the students and for what uses in the 8th grade, because that's when they're going to next be assessed.
Cool. I'm kind of scared, but okay.
Don't be at all. Oh my God. You know what? I might print one out in the car to do it with my family. Come on, guys. Can we do the 8th grade science thing? Because all of my families, we're educators. And so we have deep conversations about really the uselessness and the like growing uselessness over the decades of these massive exams. Like I've had students just really freak out unnecessarily. Brilliant kids have like panic attacks. Some kids vomit, younger kids pee themselves sometimes because they want to do a good job. And some teachers, especially back in the older days, would say things like, you won't pass the next grade if you don't blah, 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 and that's not really true. That's not true at all. I know they've tried to make it that way, but that isn't true. There are other things that are taken, sort of like the teacher that went to school and studied to be a teacher. That person has some say in it and in what you're capable of doing next year. So yeah, it's kind of shameful, and it doesn't really account for massive growth. I remember one year in particular, and I'll never forget that I was defiant and I was a young teacher. But I was a young teacher in many ways. That's like a, no pun intended. I was a young teacher because I was a teacher before I could, buy alcohol at 20 years. And then I turned 21 while I was teaching, and they were very strict with a lot of our students, and they wanted to motivate them to pass and it wasn't the STAR, it was the TAX at the time, or it might have been the TOS. In any event, there was a group of kids and they were all English language learners, new from Mexico, really picking up the language quickly, working really, really hard all year long. And I remember this girl, and I remember her first name. I don't remember her last name. I think I might, but I won't say it. But her name was Sarai, and she failed the exam by like 2 or 3 points, but she came over as like a beginner and was getting like 13s when she first, you know what I'm saying? Like she was getting nothing. There was nothing. And she might have not just come over because she was already testing with us, but in any event, she made such a huge jump. It was crazy. And it really broke my heart because like her progress was like outstanding. Like if you looked at what she had been testing at before and what she was able to do on this next year was something like a 60-point jump in her progress for language. It was nuts, but she didn't pass. You know what I'm saying? Like she didn't get the state's passing, but like what she did was a freaking miracle. And it was just talking and learning vocabulary but she didn't get to go on the field trip for the school, and I was really vocal about how I thought it was BS, and I thought that she deserved to be on that field trip because she worked really, really dang hard, and nobody else that passed made a 60-point increase in their like scores. Like literally no one on the campus. Like she should be the queen of the field trip. What are you talking about right now? But she didn't pass, so it was sad. Anyway, getting to know your students and also getting to know the TEKS is going to be the recipe for you to be an amazing teacher. Finding a way to make some of the hard stuff less difficult by making it fun and engaging and relating it to them. So I know that for your standards, and let me go to them. For your standards, you have your TEKS here, right? And the areas in your TEKS are going to be sort of clumped, those strands that they make for you in the TEKS. And you should have them highlighted, each one of those different strands, so you know like exactly what they are, because they build all the way through. And I keep on going like this, but they build this way because it's kinder, first, second, third, fourth, in that way. But you also have this area here, which is going to be important. You being able to provide varied, appropriate assessment to monitor their learning. And that means that you're walking around during experimentation, that you're listening to conversations, that you take get them started with mini sort of science reports, even if they're in the 4th grade. as a, you know, maybe not the whole shebang, but a shortened version of it. Inquiry, the process of inquiry, asking questions, hypothesis, thinking about the world, asking questions, all of those things that you wrote about in your in some of your competencies or the standards that you sent me before. So let me see. I wish they had a practice version available for you on Pearson. I know it's coming. I know it's coming, and I just can't wait for it to come. I wish it was available for all of them, and not. And the reason I say that is because it's available for some. It used to only be available for the PPR. Now it's available for like a handful of them. It just escapes my mind at the moment which those are, but they're made by the test maker. So they are the closest as far as rigor, as far as saturation of domain. They know how much they give you in each domain and each area as far as like question is concerned. And so that like everything is just better via their practice exam. And so that at some point will come, but I don't think it'll be before you take your exam. So we don't have anything beyond, you know, 240 tutoring, certified teacher, and those exams, those what are they called? The manual that they give us, the one manual with like a handful of questions. And these are the best, I would imagine, for you as far as like knowing what you need to know, because you have to know a lot about chemistry. You're gonna sort of freak out about that. That was something that somebody else and I discussed when I gave them this as an assignment. And are these available already for you? The 8th grade ones?
8th grade ones, I'm not sure. Excuse me. I'm not sure. I didn't see 8th grade. I only saw 6th grade. But
5th grade, you mean?
Yeah, 5th and 6th. But I was probably not looking in the right place.
Okay, if not, I'm gonna put them there for you. Just maybe a couple of years worth to get you started.
I did notice there was accidentally a reading one, and I was
Oh
like,
no, oh no, oops. Yeah, oops. So these are the best reviews, in my opinion, as someone, you know, who has seen a lot of the resources that are available, and everybody has the same resources available. And it is the competencies that Pearson gives out. Those competencies are made from a particular place. We know that, and it's only 2 other documents. It's your standards and your TEXES. So I like to go to the horse's mouth and make sure I know everything, like as far as what they want for me to know. And so that's why we look so critically at the standards, print them out, write on them, and why it's why it's a must to know your TEXES, analyze them, notice the nuances, make generalized sort of like, okay, well, we mostly work on this in 4th grade, and in 5th grade, we really up it with this portion of it. Make those note those differences. And I would like for you also to do that between 5th and 6th, right? After you've done 6th grade, note like, what are the where's the big jump? Where's the big difference? Where are we getting more sort of like specialized with our scientific knowledge? And then again, you know, 4, 6, and 7, but this is after you take the practice 8th grade. I mean, after you take the STAR exam, you know, because I want for you to center yourself, like, what do the 8th graders have to know? What do ultimately, you know, that you have to be able to teach them to know? Because they have to do all these skills on their own, 8th graders, whether they come from homes that don't give them breakfast, whether their parents are going through a divorce, whether their dad's in jail, whether they're special ed, whether they're English language learners. You know, they are going to have to do well on this exam. So you as a teacher need to be able to A, do well on this exam, and then B, be able to teach them to do well with these concepts and skills with the various supports based on their needs, right? So You know, if they are English language learners, then maybe you are doing more direct vocabulary instruction. You're utilizing more of those English language learning skills, those ELPS strategies. So that you're giving them more time to practice their language, their oral language proficiency. You're giving more written assignments. So like if you do a vocabulary instruction, and even if it's something very simple, like you're talking about different types of clouds in elementary, have them write down the different clouds right there and have them write it down, and then have them talk about a time that they ever saw those clouds, maybe draw a picture and then turn to someone and talk about it using that language. So based on what they give you in the scenarios, pay attention to what would be the most appropriate support for them learning that skill or that action. So that is your assignment for next time. And I cannot wait one. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Hello, this is Stephanie. Hi, Barbara, how are you?